in Bandung. I'm Tanti and I'll be served as the MC of today's webinar. It's an honor for me to inform you that among us here we have distinguished Head of Research Center for Geological Resources BRIN, Bapak Dr. Iwan Setiawan, distinguished speaker Dr. Stephen Koenig from Petrology, Geochemistry and Geochronology, PPG Group, the Andalusian Earth Science Institute, Granada, Spain. Distinguished moderator, Bapak Dr. Syahreza Saidina Angkasa, STMSC, and all participants and guests. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to read the first agenda of today's webinar. The first agenda, we will have the opening session, and the second, we will have presentation and discussion session led by the moderator, and the last, the closing session. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to read the webinar's rules of conduct. Please mute your Zoom meeting. And if you have any question, please type your brief question in the chat box or use the raise hand feature on the Zoom meeting. Please use the virtual background and all participants are welcome to change your name into your name _ your institution. And you can join the webinar through the YouTube BRIN Indonesia if there is not enough Zoom capacity. And before we proceed our first agenda, I would like to invite all participants to sing the Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya. Dear participants, we are now in the opening ceremony. As our first agenda, I would like to invite the Head of Research Center for Geological Resources, Dr. Iwan Setiawan, to deliver some welcome remarks. To Pak Iwan, the time is now yours.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Tanti. Good morning, everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, welcome to our 4th Research Center Geological Resources guest lecture. I appreciate you taking the time to attend this webinar. Today's webinar will present.
Kameranya belum ada, Pak.
Bisa nyala?
Sudah, Pak. Sudah.
Iya, bukan saya, Bu.
Can I continue?
Iya, Pak. You may continue, Pak. I'm sorry.
Welcome to our 4th Research Center for Geological Resources guest lecture. I appreciate you taking the time to attend this webinar. Today's webinar will present Dr. Stefan Konix. He will talk about the geochemistry of arc lavas and some application in Indonesia. He is a researcher at the Petrology, Geochemistry, and Geochronology Group, Research Group at the Andalusian Earth Science Institute, Granada, Spain. Thank you to Mr. Sahareja for being the moderator today, and to Mbak Tanti who introduced me. Our research center works mainly on Earth evolution and geodynamics processes, bearing rocks, forming mineral deposit. We are linking the geodynamics to understanding mineral deposit. As we know that geology is a science that studies not only the rock composition and earth structure, but also mineral deposit that form along its evolution. The geological process of plate movement, the subduction cycle, the chemical evolution of the earth and its relationship to atmospheric ocean. Oxygenation toward the habitable planet. The development of geology is currently very rapid, as we know that the technology for isotopic studies, radiogenic isotope in rock and minerals from various geological and tectonic conditions, very widely developed. The guest lecture seminar offers an opportunity to explore advance in application of lavas, geochemistry to magmatic arcs, and some of its application in studying the geological condition in Indonesia. Okay, so I hope everyone can enjoy the Research Center for Geological Resources guest lecture. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you. I turn back time to Mbak Tanti. Please, Mbak Tanti. Mute.
Okay, thank you, Pak Iwan, for the welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin our main agenda, we will be taking a pictures together. So please, sir and madam, activate your video function on your Zoom meeting, and I would like to invite the IT team to assist in the taking picture. To Pak Arif, please.
Iya, itu kan tanggung jawab juga. Ladies and gentlemen, please open your camera device. We will take photo session. Slide 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, click. Slide 2, 1, 2, 3, click. Last slide. 1, 2, 3, click. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we are finished in taking a picture. Thank you for your cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now reached to our main agenda of the webinar. But before that, I would like to remind all participants about the discussion session guide. If you have any question to the speakers, please type your question in the chat box. And you may also ask a question by activating the raise hand feature on the Zoom meeting until the moderators invite you to. And due to the time constraints, the moderator will present only selected questions to the speakers during the discussion session. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe today will be fruitful today because we have Dr. Stefan Koenig as the speakers. And for the presentation and discussion session will be presented over by Bapak Dr. Syahreza Saida Anfasa STMSC as the moderator. But before that, please allow me to read his brief biography.
Oke. Enggak, belum ini. Belum mulai.
Itu. Okay. Apa katanya? Bapak Dr. Syahreza Saidina Angkasa, STMSC. He is a researcher at the Research Center for Geological Researches, National Research and Innovation Agency of Indonesia. He completed his Bachelor of the Engineering at Pajajaran University and received his Master at Geoscience at University of Oslo and his doctoral degree of the science from Akita University. And to Pak Reza, I leave this session to you and you may take the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Bu Tanti, for the introduction. Before we start, probably I will introduce the, probably it's good to introduce our speakers today. Can I see the group link today for the lectures? So the speakers is Dr. Stefan Honig. He is from Petrology, Geochemistry, and Geochronology Group at the Andalusian Earth Science Institute, Granada, Spain. And he got his diploma in geology is from University of Münster in Germany, and Doctor of Science from the University of Bonn, Germany. His work experience, he is a ERC principal investigator from University of Tübingen, Germany, and principal investigator from Emergia, Granada, Spain, principal investigator in Instituto Andaluz de Ciencias de la Tierra, Granada, Spain. And his main publication is mostly it's an isotope, stable isotope variation in arc lavas, molybdenum isotope in plume influence, more revealed recycling of ancient anoxic sediments in geochemical perspective letters, and also the selenium isotope as a tracer of late volatile contributions to the Earth and the outer solar system in the natural geoscience. And the last publication, probably in this introduction, is boninite as a windows into trace elements mobility in the subduction zones. So before we start, I have some few words to say as an introduction to this lecture. Arc volcanism and arc magmatism are primarily driven from the recycling subducted sediments where fluids and melts liberated from the slab transport water and other elements. These processes are quite different from the purely decompression partial melts found in mid-ocean ridge basalts. The chemical compositions of arc magmas depends on the various source components, including mantle heterogeneity, subducted sediments, and oceanic rust. In these lectures, probably we will hear Dr. Stefan Honig perspective on arc lava geochemistry and its application in Indonesia. So from now on, the floor is yours, Dr. Stefan Honig, and probably we can start the presentation.
Wah, baliknya beli sorangan ke KPDG. Kupang lagi ya tuh. Tahu-tahu
Ini sepertinya udah nggak bisa dibikin lagi.
Maybe on the data. Yes, maybe on the.
Jadi hanya di kemudian
Yes. Can you drag a little bit down? Now. So once again, thank you very much. Testing this out a little bit. I hope you can hear me now. This is okay? Okay. Good morning, everybody. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the head of the research unit as well as the organizers for this invitation. I would also particularly like to mention Dr. Eroto, who invited me, and Dr. Arifudin, my old colleague from Yogyakarta, who established a contact. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure for me to be here today and talk to you a little bit about geochemistry of arc lavas, some of my research, and with potential applications to Indonesian geology, Indonesian volcanism. And before we do this, I would like to also take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about where I work now. You see here at the lower left side, there's a little map of the Iberian Peninsula. And on the right, there's Spain. And here below, you see mark where Granada is. Granada is in Andalusia. It's in the southern province of Spain, located prominently at the bottom of the Sierra Nevada. And you see nicely here the Alhambra, probably some of you have heard from Moorish times, constructed about 1,000 years before today, or started to construct around 1,000 years before today. There's a cultural diversity still present in the south of Spain, with a lot of the ancient, or I would say former people who live there. This makes it a very interesting space to live and to work, with a lot of exchange. You also see behind the Alhambra the Sierra Nevada, which in winter is covered by snow. You can ski there, but you can also, of course, get refreshing holidays from the heat, which in summer then, of course, in summer you don't have snow, but in summer you have cold air up there. It's very nice for a retreat. I think you understand, as I understand that you also like to go to Lembang, Tangkuban Perahu, to escape the heat here in Bandung, So this is where I live, and I work now for the Spanish National Research Council. So I decided to move there after 20 years of studying and working in Germany. I had many international collaborations all over the world, actually, but including in Spain. And I had the opportunity to join this very challenging and but also exciting research council. The way that they work there is a little bit different from Germany, of course, but it is geology nonetheless. And so we all here and all over the world, the earth scientists all have this in common. So we are, I always like to say, like a big international family. We all share this ideas and that everything is somehow connected. So we all have something we can talk about together, yeah, despite of different cultural backgrounds. The CSIC, which is the Spanish abbreviation, Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, it just means Spanish National Research Council, is an independent research body directly under the ministry, the Spanish Ministry of Science, of Research and Innovation. And it is with, as you can see here, quite a number of researchers and quite a budget, the annual budget in euros, one of the largest research research organizations in Europe. It's the third largest research organization in Europe. Yeah? And it has its independent institutes. They sometimes are joint institutes between universities. Yeah? Sometimes they don't have their own buildings. Sometimes, like in this case in Granada, I show you here at the lower picture, my institute. This is the Andalusian Earth Sciences Institute. This is about 10 years old, relatively new, and it hosts about 120, I would say, around about researchers, of whom 60 permanent researchers. At the moment. They have to obtain in collaboration with the university, but we are part, including our conducting research, supervising regionalization
Yeah.
Okay.
Ah. Okay, yes. So this little break came at the right time because we'll make the transition a little bit to research. And when I talked to my friend and colleague Arifuddin, we said it would be nice to present something which combines the kind of basic research that I do in Spain at the moment, which is to try and use geochemistry to find out about arc volcanism, including other aspects, and to see how we can combine this perhaps with something a little bit applied, such as mineral resources. And so I, in preparation for this presentation, I did a little bit of research again, and I found quite an interesting publication published early this year in Earth and Planetary Science Letters, where they make the case, in fact, that some anomalous volcanism might be connected to occurrence of large gold porphyry deposits. And this immediately caught my attention because it combines those two aspects that also link Arifuddin and myself, I would say, arc volcanism, geochemistry of arc volcanism, and magmatic sources, and so on, with the origin of geological relevant deposits such as gold deposits. Yeah. And they make the case in this publication that there are genetic links in some cases. Now, I do not want to take any side here. This is just an example of how basic research, I think, and applied geological sciences are, at least to understand the deeper, the deeper origin of the sources of deposits. This is catching more and more attention of also international researchers. So I hope you note that there is not really an Indonesian researcher in the author list here. These people are mainly from Australia, and they did not conduct, to my knowledge, in this publication, field research. They use the database, the GeoRock database, or they use already available geophysical data, and they make this argument, this whole paper, this whole discussion, and the whole argument based on already published data. And I think there can be a lot said about this, including maybe also criticize perhaps a little bit that there's a little bit less link to field geology, or perhaps also criticize the fact that not really an Indonesian researcher involved here. But let's have a look at what they propose. This is, of course, a map that you know of Indonesia. Here in dark blue, you see the circumventing the trench, and then the subduction zone, and here in the south, particularly the Java, the island of Java. And you see, and that's what I want to point out, in white are these so-called white triangles, are these, as they call in this publication, anomalous volcanoes, so unusual volcanoes in terms of location and also in terms of geochemistry. And they say that in some cases, the location coincides with the location of giant gold porphyry, copper gold porphyry deposits. Those are the noted here in these white circles. Yeah. And again, I do not want to defend this publication. This is just showing here as an example of what in some cases is catching more and more attention. So we go a little bit, perhaps as a background. Of course, I think you all know, but I want to show this into detail more, zooming in onto the island of Java, where you have also here on this map the trench, and then you have these lines here that denote the depth of the slab beneath Java, going down to 400 or beyond kilometers or beyond beneath the so-called rear arc, or it's not a full back arc, sensu stricto, but you can say it's behind the main chain of, it is behind the main chain of volcanoes that are here. So those volcanoes that are behind the main chain of volcanoes are already in an unusual location. Because they are behind there, they are rear arc volcanoes, and they are also unusual in terms of their geochemistry, as they are high in potassium. And there's two examples, those two names given here that I think you are very familiar with. I'm going to focus a little bit on Moria now as I continue, and you can see that the slab is relatively deep here already in this location. This is just a slide that shows along the arc from left to right with distance along the arc, going a little bit beyond Java, and then the slab dip, so the angle of the slab. And you see that Moria, same as well in this location, is also very different from the rest. So there's something, yes, there's something unusual going on here. Perhaps again, a little bit a repetition, but this is the depth of the Benioff zones detected by these seismic waves, and you see that also with from red to colder colors, including blue, you see the increasing depth. Reading the legend, and you see that at the location here where those two volcanoes would be that I said, including Moria, there is a so-called, there's kind of a gap, what in the literature is referred to as the seismic gap. So there seems to be something, let's say, tentatively missing. What is going on here? I would like to also, and I will show more publications, but I would also like to say that it was, I think, 16 years ago, I, together with Arifuddin, we together led a field excursion at the time from my university in Bonn. We took German students, master students, some PhD students, and also some Indonesian students from Yogyakarta. We took on a 3-week tour from Krakatau over Java to Bali. And along the way, we also managed to collect some samples that we analyzed. And it took some time, I admit, until some of my colleagues found the time to finally publish this. But Arifuddin here is associated. And we have this publication, or it's now 2 years, and it is getting cited for its data. What in this publication is now relevant to what I mentioned earlier, to this anomalous volcanoes, including Moria, is that we are also pointing out that, of course, Moria here, as you see on the left, has the very high potassium geochemistry in terms of major elements, compared to, I think, a representative suite of lavas from Krakatau and the main arc front, volcanic arc front across or along Java. And then I think there's Agung, and then there's also a volcano, Jani, I think, from Lombok represented here. So this is not the first time that this was found. There was a paper much older by an American person, but we wanted actually to to have this represented as well, and then investigate deeper. What I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to go a little bit deeper each step and try and show how more investigation, a little bit more detail, some more gives some more information, and we learn more and more step by step. And so you see here on the right hand side on this diagram, the niobium tantalum ratios, particularly important on the y-axis here, the niobium tantalum ratios. And this is the most important observation I would like to draw the attention, is that those from Muria, the high potassium lavas, are very high in niobium tantalum ratios. So this is the elemental concentration of niobium divided by the elemental concentration of tantalum. Yeah, so this is another observation which is interesting. This is also anomalous, I think you could say, unusual compared to the other lavas. Again, shown here at the bottom. And to provide you with some background, here shown on the as an inlet figure, the rare earth elements. I think you know this, to chondrite normalized. You see that the lavas from Muria, the back arc lavas, they are steeper. They're showing here, they're showing kind of a steeper pattern. The angle of dip here is steeper compared to the other lavas. But more importantly, on this large diagram here, where also you have the same, you have two groups. You have this, again, this back arc group, Muria samples, compared to, at the bottom here, these other more common arc front lavas. Compared to, so the trace element concentrations normalized to primitive mantle in this case. And you see from left to right the elements with decreasing incompatibility, so they become more and more compatible in rocks. So when rocks melt, then those elements here on the right, they tend to stay in the residue, and those elements on the left, they go more into the melt. And it is very interesting that those two elements here, niobium and tantalum, these two elements, niobium and tantalum, they are, as you can see, they are forming kind of a negative anomaly. This negative niobium tantalum anomaly is often attributed to the fact that although normally, according to their compatibility, these elements should also go into the melt, something is keeping them behind. Something is locking them, and it is indeed confirmed by experimental data and by natural observation, by studies, that it is rutile, shown here the crystal lattice of rutile, where you have the ionic radius and ionic charge, that it is indeed these high field strength elements, including niobium and tantalum, that substitute for titanium. And so we now know that in subduction zones, rutile in the slab keeps those elements behind and is the reason for this negative anomaly. This is a little bit repetition for some of you who know geochemistry of arc lavas, but I want to do this nevertheless to have everybody here on the same page. Now, this is the reason for the negative concentration anomaly. But as I have shown earlier, and I want to represent here somehow with this extrapolation, the ratio of niobium to tantalum, the concentration of niobium divided by the concentration of tantalum, this ratio here, as shown by the different, is a difference. It's showing a difference between Muria and between the other lavas. And this is an additional observation to the negative concentration anomalies. So there's less of niobium and tantalum on one hand. On the other hand, Muria shows a little bit more, than the other lavas, but the ratio is different. Hope this is clear. And now we remember the diagram I've shown earlier. Niobium tantalum ratio here, because the niobium is higher, Yeah, here you see the tantalum ratios go up. And this is another diagram from this publication of ours, from those samples that we have. You see here that the niobium-tantalum ratio is indeed increasing as the niobium content is increasing. Yeah, exclusively in the Moria lava. So again, something unusual. Yeah, and yeah, and this is because suddenly the rutile that normally for other lavas tends to keep those elements behind, yeah, is starting to give away again those elements by partial melting. And we know by experiments, and we know by again comparing different sites, that this is probably due to the fact that the slab is melting. Yeah. And this is a different process compared to the more common process of slab dehydration. Now we'll go a little bit into this as we continue. And so again, to summarize a little bit, you have here cross sections, and you see from left to right that there is kind of like a warmer signature showing up here, in this color coding. And this is supposed to be some sort of a break or some sort of a window or a slab tier. Something happens to the slab. Yeah. And this location behind where those unusual volcanoes exist. So we're trying to reconcile the scarcely available, but available observation with data. Yeah, that so we see indeed those volcanoes are unusual in terms of location, in terms of when we go with geophysics, we try to investigate this deeper, and we see there's something unusual going on. And also, I hope I could convince you there's something unusual in terms of geochemistry. Now, we would like to understand yet again in more detail what is actually going on. For this, we always need more investigation, and we need, I think, at some point to go into isotope geochemistry, particularly what is on the rise, has been on the rise in the last 10 years, I would say, stable isotope geochemistry. And I would like to also take the opportunity and announce that this year we will have the publication of the third volume of the treatise on geochemistry, which is the world's, I would say, in science, the leading peer review collection, or the review collection of peer-reviewed articles that summarize all of geochemistry. This is a vast volume. Yeah, over 11,000 pages, many big themes, going from cosmochemistry to marine geochemistry, also to deposit, I think geochemistry is involved. And there's also a chapter involved, and a chapter that will deal with stable isotope variations in arc lavas. And my colleague Julie Prutilak, she is a professor at Durham University in the United Kingdom, and myself, we have been invited 3 years ago by the distinguished editorial board to contribute a chapter, as both Julie and myself, we have for, I think, 10 years now contributed a lot of stable isotope research to the community. And this is a big privilege and honor indeed to be involved in this. And this is scheduled to appear on the 1st of September of this year. And this is, and you're the first audience to actually see this. This is 1 or 2 or 3 slides now from our chapter. This is giving you an overview of the stable isotope the stable isotopes that we can apply to arc volcanism from the periodic table. And of course, you all know isotopes are atoms of same protons and electron, but of different neutrons. So they behave chemically the same, but they have different mass because the number of neutrons they can change. And because of this, you can add new tools to investigate many processes, not just subduction zones, but including, of course, subduction zones, arc volcanism. And to summarize a little bit without going here too much into detail, there is a vast number of isotope systems now available to us that have been set up and that have been studied and that have been compared in samples between different locations, volcanoes and so on, and which we now know more or less how they behave and what they now can tell us. Isotopes also can tell us, these stable isotopes. And so there are isotope systems that can be applied to tracing sources, different components that are entering the subduction zone, such as different types of sediments, the underlying oceanic crust, the underlying serpentinite. Then there's the possibility to trace what is going on, the processes. Is it melting? Is it dehydration? And I mentioned earlier, dehydration and melting possibly something that is involved, melting of the slab that is involved in contributing elements and contributing signatures to the subarc mantle beneath Moria. And you will find this in the treatise chapter that will appear, as I said, next month, actually, quite soon. Before I go in more detail into one selected isotope system that I worked on for quite a while now, I go a little bit back. And of course, I would like to also say that before doing something so advanced, and I would say in some ways also takes time. It takes not just money, it also takes time, and it takes dedication, and it takes sometimes your entire career to be able to use isotopes in this way. And then you do not want to do this on samples that are maybe altered, that are too weathered, that are not adequate, that are not the right samples. So I think it is also important to mention that some of us geochemists that are often called laboratory animals, that we also sometimes still like to go to the field and collect our own samples. And sometimes it's not possible, but to include some of our samples that we select and collect ourselves in our investigation. By doing this, we cannot blame anybody but ourselves if we don't have the right samples. This is an example of what I like to do a lot, is to sample fresh basalts from lava flows. And by fresh, I mean this lava flow, this particular one here, can be a crust outside, oxidized crust perhaps outside, but inside the okay. Inside, after you use the sledgehammer and after you remove those weathering rings, you very often have the opportunity to find something relatively fresh, relatively, as we say scientifically correctly, pristine. But this is heavy work. Also, this is not the kind of fine work that later we do in the laboratory. This is heavy work, and particularly in a country like Indonesia, with the conditions, with the weather when it's hot. I can tell you swing the sledgehammer a couple of times, you are getting tired. You need to plan this rather take more than a colleague. to take turns in sampling. Yeah, this is an example from from the only picture from that ago. And as time passes, no, maybe it's offline. No, this. Just try. I think no. This is connected again. Yeah. Full screen here. Yeah. So this one. Yeah. Yes, so when you have finally flown a couple thousand kilometers by airplane, you take transport somewhere else to the coast, you organize a boat, in many cases a boat, a volcanic island, and then finally you are there. Then you do not want to give up because you're tired. You have to keep going and you need to look for something as fresh as possible. And one of the best indicators is always, as we say, an indicator mineral or freshness for something pristine, for something that we can actually take to the laboratory and analyze for geochemistry and isotopes. Such minerals is olivine. Olivine is a nanosilicate size, yeah, in a basalt, and you also know then as a nanosilicate, its structure is not very robust against all sorts of weathering. But when it is still present, this means that the rest that the rest must be also pristine. Yeah. This is a kind of an indicator. Take a very good, very fresh sample suitable for geochemistry. You look for olivine and basalt, and this also gives you a second type of information that the melt, that it's actually basalt, or can be still basaltic andesite, yeah, but it's normally not andesitic. So this is olivine, again, shows you degree of freshness and shows you that it's a mafic sample. And mafic sample is nice also because least differentiated means it is the closest to the magmatic source. If we want to investigate the origin, we want to go back to the origin. Yeah. And this is, of course, olivine in a cross-polarized light. Yeah, this is just to show you how also in our lab, the clean laboratory, there is course, the necessity to have filter, to have clean air, to wear something that would normally already not shoes. We go and we change into this outfit. We wear safety goggles. Many also we wear now also contain maybe some liquid, or maybe just you do want to avoid at all costs to contaminate the sample. It depends on what type of elements and what type of isotopes you are interested in. If you want to do red of lead, you need really you need this, absolutely need this kind of protection from the outside world. You need air conditioning equipped with special filters, and you need to change the filters. Normally in Granada, we change the filters every 2 weeks. In case we have a sandstorm from the Sahara, we immediately change the filters. There's different sets of filters, but the outside filter, the first one, we have to change immediately. This is very cost intensive, and it also in terms of personnel. Now we need to train those people that are doing all of this. And then once everything is there and everything is clean, and we have this outfit and our sample there, we have crushed our sample. We have powders. We take those of powder into a small Savilex. We add acid with a bit of nitric in terms of sulfides. If we have silicate rocks, we require hydrofluoric acid, HF, which is very dangerous and requires strong safety measures, and not everybody is permitted to use this. And we close the Savilex with the powder and with the acid, and we place it on a hot plate. We let it cook. This is shown here on the left. There are some cabinets there. We let it cook usually for 2 days or something, and then we let it cool down. We open the Savilex and we dry down, as we say. We fume off the acid, and this acid fume is not going to the outside. This is again collected, and this needs to be properly taken away. Again, more work, more safety measures, and so on. One of my researchers, postdoctoral researchers, is working with one of the samples. What we do also, and this is the next step after digestion of the sample. Once the sample, all the, let's say, silica bonds, all the bonds are broken effectively, we can take up again, we can dissolve the sample in a weaker acid, depending on what we do next. And we put the sample in dissolved form onto these little columns, as you can see here on the left. You can see here these columns. This is on a kind of a carousel for different samples. It's quite convenient to work. And in these little columns, there is a resin. There's an organic substance which separates different elements from one another. So if we want to, let's say, have an element like lead, we need to separate everything else. Ideally, this takes time. This takes sometimes a day. These again, you see here the resins. All these materials that you see have to be cleaned. They have to be stored safely, and those columns, in some cases, the resin, they have to be calibrated, which means that we have to first pass the standard solution, and we have to know when we put the solution on top. We have to know how many milliliters of other acids we need to add, and when exactly the elements we don't want are coming out, and at some point the element that we want is coming out. Because this is called the purification, matrix separation. Matrix is everything we don't want. So we want to separate this from our sample. This is a lot of our work. So field work is nice, but then this is a lot of our work, our PhD students, also our technicians, technical staff, they are spending a lot of time in the lab. This is our instrument room. Once the samples have been collected, they have been crushed, they have been digested, and the matrix has been separated, we can continue and take this into the instrument room. This is the instrument room of our group in Granada. This is one of the instrument rooms where we have several instruments, quadrupole ICP instruments, inductively coupled plasma instruments, the ionized. I will show this a little bit later, what actually happens. And we have a nice acquisition here in the back. You see, this is a mass spectrometer, the so-called multi-collector mass spectrometer. Multi-collector because we can collect more than one isotope at a time. This is for high precision isotope measurements. This is the type of instrument required to analyze the novel stable isotopes that I talk about now. Yeah, this is how the instrument would look like in the inside. It's like a little smart car, something like the size of it. And of course, this is also in a clean room. Yeah, so the room before was where the computers are, and then this here is in a room separated with a sliding door, and we have fresh air coming in, also filtered. We try to keep this environment as clean as possible. Also wear something, you know, as protection. Without too much going into detail now, but I have to mention this is what actually happens at a plasma source mass spectrometer, is that you have several thousand degrees hot plasma, which is like a flame fed by argon. And this is so hot that it manages here at its source to break the molecules. So you introduce your sample as a solution, of a solution that you bring, and you suck this solution into the instrument, and then there's already a vacuum. And the vacuum is becoming stronger. This different vacuum is increasing up to 10 to the -9 in the back. But first, what happens? So this plasma heats up. The solution is no longer a solution; it's an aerosol. Yeah, and the atoms are being separated from one another, and you are obtaining individual ions. So this is the ionization step. Then you bring those ions to the same velocity. You focus the beams and so on. And then this is very interesting. There's this typical, as 100 years ago, a mass spectrometer. The original Faraday used it. There's a magnet. Magnet separates masses, separates the heavy from the light. You can imagine a heavy truck. Yeah, it's not so easy to go quickly around the corner like a light car, sport car. Yeah? So the light isotopes are here concentrated, and they become heavier to the outside. And this is also why we need the separation before. This is important to know, because this instrument is a high technology, but it is just able to separate isotopes, to separate masses. So we need to know, for instance, if we want to measure strontium isotopes, yeah, we want to know 87, mass 87 strontium. We want to know, is this 87 strontium, or what about rubidium? There's also a mass, is overlapping 87 rubidium, and this we don't want. So this is part of what we want to separate earlier in the step with the columns, so that in the end we have a pure strontium solution in an ideal world, and we collect this, and then we can look at all the other isotopes, and we can measure the isotopic ratio. Okay. What I'm going to show you now in the following is some, and it's not too long anymore, but there's some more detailed information about one selected isotope that I like to work with a lot. It's molybdenum stable isotopes. And colleagues, together with colleagues, published, which molybdenum stable isotope systematics, molybdenum isotope systematics in subduction zones and arc lavas, showing a little bit how you have different signatures and what controls them. And some of what I also show is also new information in the chapter, which is about, as I mentioned earlier, to be published next month. Yeah. So I try and make this as simple as I can and showing and highlighting for you the most interesting. You see here on one axis, on the y-axis, the molybdenum stable isotope ratio in a certain notation is a delta notation. This means, and in per mil, this basically means that this is very, very small variation. That's why we need this big instrument to show us this very, very small variation in isotopes. And you just need to know that this here is becoming heavier. So the heavier isotopes are more concentrated. And then below here, as you go down, you have less and less and less heavy isotopes. Yeah, but this is relative. Yeah, you always have all isotopes, but some of them are becoming a little bit less, and you can just measure this. Yeah. And I show in this graph isotope variations of molybdenum for selected lavas from subduction related volcanoes versus on the x-axis the depth of slab. And you can see that compared to melts from an ocean-rich basalt, which is non-subduction related, which is something we use in comparison. So in comparison to this, all these samples here from all these volcanoes, they are going from here up. So there's a tendency to have a heavier isotopic composition in molybdenum in these volcanoes where the slab is between 100 to 200 kilometers deep. And then there are some volcanoes where we can take samples. You see that they are above a slab that is already deeper. And then, yeah, they overlap a little bit with those, but there's also less samples. It's true. But it's interesting, there's nothing really going up here. Yeah, so there's a tendency for something to be not so high here. Yeah? And I just continue and show you that there's also lavas from volcanoes above a slab that is really deep and over 400 kilometers deep, in fact, relatively deep. And these are now a large number, relatively representative, I would say. And they, first of all, are not going up, but going down. So we can describe here, when we see this, that the molybdenum isotope signatures of arc volcanoes seem to be dependent on the situation of the volcanoes above the slab. They vary as a function of slab depth. Very interesting. Why is this interesting? And I'm trying to make this step by step and go also involve Indonesia a little bit here. In these samples, Indonesia is not involved yet because for our chapter in this review, in this book, we focus on volcanoes that are unequivocally, that are really, really an ocean setting. And Indonesia and Java is a little bit, in some cases, some researchers, not so much myself, but I would say it depends on where you sample on Java. There's a little bit of a thicker crust, yeah, beneath Java already, particularly the center. Yeah, and so some researchers argue that to understand the more complex, we do this later. We first do the simpler case. So this is a simple case, and I think it's quite simple, to understand this. It's true. It's an ideal case scenario. Now here's a question mark. How is this linked perhaps to Java? And how is this linked perhaps? We go deeper, and I explained and I showed this earlier. I hope you remember that Moria, unusual location in the back behind the normal arc, front, where the slab is already deeper and where we see this anomaly, also this heat anomaly, I would say, or heat in the slab, potentially a slab window, potentially something that happens to the slab that might cause the melts to rise from here and enrich the mantle beneath Moria, as an example. And so from this, it could be that the lavas in terms of molybdenum, in this case, they should be somewhere here. They are also, in molybdenum, they are also light. They're also somewhere here. So let's see how this is really turning out. Because in my preparation for this presentation, I found that there is already one publication about molybdenum isotopes in samples from volcanoes in Java. And there's, I think, a name that you all recognize involved, perhaps in establishing the contact. And the rest of the team, I understand, is a Taiwanese research group. And it's very interesting, this study. They reported some values. And I have put them, summarized this inside the same diagram. They also sampled the arc front volcanoes, like Krakatau, Tangkuban, and so on, Merapi, and so on. They show this variation. And they sampled also the rear arc, the back arc volcanoes, as I wrote here, and they show the same variation. So 2 observations. First of all, the normal volcanoes, they go a little bit up, but they also go down. So in terms of molybdenum, they are not exclusively heavy in Java. And the second observation is that with increasing slab depth, there's not really visible a difference now. There's not really visible a difference. So again, this ideal case here with intraoceanic arc lavas, Kamchatka, there's some cases, but also Isu, in Tonga, we have some really intraoceanic. Java seems to be a little bit more complicated. But this is science, that you move now to the more complicated scenarios and you try to understand what is going on. And when you go a little bit into detail of that last publication, then you see, of course, this is me, I simplify this, but this is what they write in the abstract, what is written in the abstract, that is the same and so on. When you go a little bit into detail, you find, there is room, there's a lot of possibility now, later, after this pioneering study on Java, to come again and to try again and to do more. And I think you see that Moria, for instance, there is only one sample here, down here. And then there's, shows a large range, but there's only one sample for most of the Moria samples are up here. I find this already very interesting because Moria is situated really further away, and that is showing this large spread. So I'm not sure that this data here, they fully represent what is really going on. I think it is worth to go again, to sample again, and to analyze again. And I think it is very worth to do trace elements, and as I shown earlier, including this niobium tantalum, and to find out step by step, sample by sample, what is really controlling the molybdenum isotope signature. This is what I summarize here at the bottom, that I think, first of all, molybdenum has high potential. And secondly, there is still need, we require more data from Java. So before perhaps I conclude, I don't want to push my luck too much, but I want to say for those that have further interest in molybdenum, the reason perhaps why, and this is written in already in this EPSL paper that I published with colleagues about the molybdenum isotope systematics and subduction zone. But the reason for this ideal case is that in the normal situation where the arc lavas from volcanoes, where the slab is shallow, there's more dehydration going on. as the slab subducts, metamorphic reactions in the slab make the minerals and the whole subduction package tighter, and there's no more room for larger ion elements and also compounds such as water, and they have to leave and they rise and they go up. This might be causing the heavy molybdenum isotope signature in these because they are enriched by fluids. And of course, I know this because I have more background investigation, but I want to simplify this a little bit for you and show this and not take too much of the time. And what is causing this then later is more melting of the slab. Yeah. So after the slab is, now I'm going to go back here. After a slab is dehydrating, actually, yeah, it relatively enriched in the lighter, and if this is later released, the complementary, like balance. Yeah. And this is, I think, what is nicely chemistry, and particularly that of molybdenum, with the process of dehydration, with the process of melting, and perhaps in the shallower crust and later that enrich also in economically viable elements. This is what the very first paper I used as an introduction makes as a point. They make the point that melting of the slab actually is the cause. Hearing, they say they use different words. This is it can be used as synonyms in this case. I think the important thing is that they think that this is this process of melting that enriches the subarc mantle, and that later is the reason for not only the anomalous arc volcanism in the back, but also enriching the crust in those copper, gold, and other economically viable elements. And this is what is proposed. This is what is investigated. Yeah. So I would just like to summarize that indeed the geological relationships between volcanoes on one hand and the natural resources on the other hand, they are linked. To understand, to study the volcanoes in some cases can also mean to have more deeper knowledge about what is really going on behind enrichment and economically viable elements. You understand a little bit deeper. Yeah, you don't only know what you're doing, but you also know where you're coming from. And potentially, I think this is an important message in terms of basic knowledge can also bring constraints, particularly if I understand this. The research budget for basic knowledge is not always the same. We're very privileged in some areas, and sometimes we need to convince with funding for this. And this is one way to potentially convince with funding, convince with the information that it makes sense to understand origin of arc volcanism, understand unusual volcanism as well, because eventually we will gain more understanding about the porphyry deposits, including other things. And in collaboration, of course, in Indonesia, Indonesian with international laboratories, as you have done, as I have shown, as I say you, but as has been done already with in this example with the Taiwanese group. Stable isotopes, I believe, can really bring new constraints, and this is now the time to enter into this and to start doing this. I hope you found this presentation interesting, both in terms of giving you a little bit of an insight into geochemistry, isotopes with application to Indonesian arc volcanism. And also thank you for your patience and for your interest in not just the presentation, the scientific part, but also and I was asked to present a little bit about my institute and Granada. I thank you so much, and I say terima kasih. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your presentation. Dr. Stefan Koenig, it's very interesting. And probably we will start Q&A session. We open for three questions first. Is there any question in Zoom meeting? Probably. Okay. So probably we don't have question until now. We don't have question in Zoom meetings. Probably I will start the question first. I'm not really familiar with the stable isotope using stable isotope in rocks. I'm mostly using stable isotopes in volcanic ash. Familiar with the isotope I did my PhD on doing working in volcanic ash, using sulfur isotopes. Volcanic ash. So what kind of species that we use in stable isotopes for rocks? So what kind of species that we use? Something like that.
Thank you for this question. It's a very good question. In the case of molybdenum, I keep with this example. You are using different species variation MO update. This is a soluble component.
Okay. 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 So we're still waiting for any question from the audience. Moderator, please. Yeah, Professor Ananto, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Koenig. It's very interesting presentation. I just want to know about the you mentioned that you're using the molybdenum isotopes to differentiate between the we have Indonesia and Italy volcanic arc, yeah, Sumatra, Java, and continue to the eastern, to the east, the southern islands. But you mentioned the Muria in Central Java, yeah. I just want to know, is it also connected to the subduction system in the south of Java? Because Muria, I think, connect to the subduction system that run to the northeast, yeah, to Meratus. Just for
Prof. Ananto, please,
Yeah.
can you wait? Probably because the speaker connection is down.
Okay.
So probably we will fix this first, and then you can continue your question.
Okay. So please let us know. Let me know.
Okay, Prof. Ananto, probably you can start your question.
Okay,
Ananto.
Okay, Mr. Konik, it's very interesting presentation. I just want to know that you mentioned before in the diagram about the Muria volcano. Yeah, Muria volcano is for us, yeah, it's a little something like that's anomaly because they're not in the volcanic arc of especially in West Indonesia, yeah, from Sumatra, Java. You can continue or something, moderator. Hello.
We can continue, but the problem is your connections also. I'm not really sure. Is it my connection or your connection? So the sound is not really clear. You can continue the question. I will read the question to the speaker.
Yeah, just a brief question. I just want to know, is it the
brief question, please.
Okay,
Professor.
the Muria volcano relate to the south of Java subduction system or Meratus subduction system? That's all. Okay, thank you. Yeah, because Muria is not in the volcanic arc. Actually, that's little something like anomaly. Thank you.
Okay. So, did you hear the question? So I will repeat the question. I think Hopefully, I'm fully understood what Professor said, because the connection is not very poor.
very poor.
What is the
What is
what you call
the one?
The Muria? Is it part of
The Muria
Sunda subduction system or the previous subduction system?
Sunda
Can you
subduction
trace
system
it from
or the previous subduction system?
Stable isotope.
Can you stable isotope?
What you call it one? Yeah.
What you call it one?
Stable
Yeah.
isotope
Stable
experiment
isotope
for
experiment
this answer.
for this answer.
Yes, thank you for this very good question. Of course, it is part of the same subduction of the same Sunda subduction system. As geophysics already tells us, there is a deep, the slab continues. It is just 3 times as deep beneath Moria as beneath Merapi, for instance, with a very, very deep dip, and also with the slab window. Yeah. With stable isotopes, and they are vast. I showed in the beginning this periodic table with the colors, showing the different different elements that have isotopes and nations. My example of molybdenum was designed to show that the process of dehydration versus melting can be very well distinguished. And of course, you do not use stable isotopes alone. This is very important to know. This is something you use in addition to everything else. In addition to what was previously already possible. You do not forget this now. You do this also. Then, for instance, what you do also, the concentrations, but also the radiogenic isotope compositions, such as strontium and lead, they will tell you also that the components are similar. They are perhaps contributing in different ways. As I said, versus fluid or versus melt. And then it's a combination of these different applications that will give you a picture like a puzzle. The puzzle is not yet complete, and we need the pieces. And I would, in my opinion, say that these pieces of puzzle that are very, very valuable to see the picture, the complete picture, are those stable isotopes. And of course, we need some insight into what is possible, and you need some good prospects. But Moria is a very good prospect to unravel this mystery.
I hope it answers your question, Prof. Hananto. So probably we can continue to another question. Okay. We have one question in this room from Riostantika.
Thank you, Dr. Koenig, for your interesting presentation. So my name is Riostantika. My main interest lies in geothermal studies, and particularly fluid geochemistry. I'm focused on the speciation occurring in the water-rock interaction process, but maybe using molybdenum isotopes is kind of new knowledge for me. So my question is, typically speciation correlates with database. So do your research group have such a database for speciation of any test elements or maybe isotopes? Speciation database from maybe fields around the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So to what I do, but so enough to know that especially for molybdenum fluids, sediments have been analyzed not just in modern environments, but also in the geological past. In fact, most stable isotope applications that we now apply most stable isotope applications to magmatism. They come from previous applications to, as we say, low temperature environments, sedimentary rocks, or marine geochemistry, and then also intermediate hydrothermal and so on. So there, from the top of my head, I cannot now tell you the publications or so on, but there are, of course, for hydrothermal systems, there are data, and I think different hydrothermal systems, whether black smokers, the bottom of the sea, or also hydrothermal systems on land. In some cases also volcanically related. So one would have to go a little bit into the literature and search, but I think this is possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Marius. Okay.
So, do we have any other question from Zoom? Okay.
Yes, I understand. What you mention does not exist yet. It's early to turn around and use isotope signatures. Molybdenum was just an example. One could use copper. One could use other chalcophile element-based systems like selenium, for instance, to potentially trace. At this time, I think we are one step before. In this time, we are in the step of trying to understand how, once we know that there is a deposit, what its stable isotope signature looks like, and how it's potentially related to the processes. And then once we understand that, then you can take the next step. I understand that. I understand very well that in search for quick money, sometimes there is no such time, to invest that. And my aim here was not also to say that it is easy and to say that something can be done quickly, but to find a link between, I would say, you and me as representatives of, let's say, our that we represent economic geology and isotope geochemistry in basic research. Yeah. So first I would look for I mean, in terms of research, I find everything exciting. In terms of, I know I'm pushing a little bit and going a little bit into what is useful. One would have to take, as we discussed already earlier, we would have to first look into a case study where we need to do this step before. We need to look into barren rocks and compare them to the economically viable element-bearing rocks, and compare them and see if we can indeed identify differences. And there must be, I'm saying there must be differences. There must be ways that the chemical differences are imposed also on or impose differences in isotopic signatures. Yeah, this is nature. You investigate. You find some similarities. Yeah, perhaps in some systems. Yes, but you also I can say that the vast periodic table is almost available for stable isotopes, and you will identify one or two systems that are interesting potentially for prospects. And also in terms of stable isotopes, it usually do not need large numbers of samples. We're talking about different locations, of course, and then and we're also, I think, in this case, I think now that I'm thinking about this as well, this is not the first thing that you do. Yeah, of course, you also, like me, in basic research and for geochemistry and volcanism, I don't do only stable isotopes. I do this once I'm out of answers from everything else. And I understand that you yesterday had a talk with somebody with a company, going deeper, going harder. Yeah. Yeah, perhaps this is one of the this is one of the things.
Yeah, a little bit comment. I think for us, it's not only interested in terms of scientific, but also in the practical for industry. I think it's very interesting. And as you know, I said my statement yesterday, the exploration going deeper and going harder. And it means one of the tools for the future is the geochemistry. So as you know, along the Java Island and others, ARC Indonesia is hosts many and a lot of abundant of world-class deposit, and some already discovered, and some is still concealed underneath. It means that one of the tools that we can do to interpret the presence of the concealed deposit underneath is with that approach, with the geochemical approach. One of them is isotope, not only restricted on the isotope, but also another, and also mineral chemistry of such diagnostic mineralites, zircon and others. So this will be interesting for the future on the application of the geochemistry. I think that is my additional comment. Thanks, friend. Back to Mas Reza.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Probably Renaldi have question.
Okay. Thank you for your presentations. I have two questions. The first question will be very short. So just give me your opinion about the using mineral chemistry for tectonic discrimination, because many people now use aside of geochemistry for whole rock geochemistry and isotopes, people now also use the mineral chemistry, and then they plot in some sort of ternary diagram or any diagram to distinguish the tectonic setting. So what do you think about this one? And the second question is, in the very complex tectonic environment like Sulawesi, maybe you have heard already, in which the rocks from the previously formed rocks and then remelted in the new settings, and then in this kind of environment, do you think the geochemistry and isotopes are applicable to determine the source or tectonic setting of the volcanic or intrusive rocks? Thank you.
Thank you for those two very interesting questions. To your first question, short question, short answer, yes, I think so. Minerals give you a more detailed look. They give you a higher resolution of what is going on. In the bulk rock, you have a mixture always of different things going on. So it depends on which rock you are talking about. If you're looking at a rock of one melt, then perhaps it's not the same as you're looking at a metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock geochemistry without understanding the mineralogy is more difficult. So yes, it is definitely worth also to look at the mineralogy, look at the geochemistry of individual minerals, and I know what you're referring to. So as short as I can, yes. And also a clear yes to your second question. A clear yes, but of course, this is also requiring detailed geochemistry. In a setting like this, it's not so easy like on Java. Yeah? Java, everything, you have one straight, relatively straight trench, and a slab beneath, I think beneath volcanoes in the west. Let's just take two examples. The slab depth beneath Krakatau and Merapi is almost the same. You can correlate them, yeah? And then beneath Muria is deeper. Yeah? Then Sulawesi, you're going to something completely more complex. But it is a very is an interesting case, and is one of the cases where I would say geochemistry helps you, because geochemistry records very well previous situations, previous processes, and is very useful in cases where the as you say, ancient volcanism or earlier volcanism, yeah, or earlier situations have tectonically changed through the plate tectonic movement or something, or have changed. The geochemistry will keep a record. It will add new record, but it will also keep an old record. And of course, this is something geophysics don't do. Geophysics doesn't keep a record. Geophysics is only for what's going on right now. And I mean, people are using geochemistry to try and study ocean current, yeah, as a circulations, the chemical transfer from one place to another in an ocean, in an ancient ocean, perhaps 2, 5, 10, 20 million years ago, and then study the sediments that are with such age that are recording this, like the marine signature, or going even older, depending on how old you want your rocks to be, depending if you want to study, I don't know if you have like a supercontinent, yeah, break up, things like that. So I think that this is something very very useful indeed, but it's not also quick. So yes, but also work.
I
think we still have one question.
I think we still have
what I mean is we still have time for
question.
one question. So if somebody wants to have a question from Zoom,
What I mean is we still have time for one question. Raise your hand,
we still
or
have
probably we
questions
still
from
have
our room.
a question from our room.
One more question, please.
Okay, Prof. Ananto, one more question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to know that Java and Sumatra, there's different.
Okay, one more question. Yeah.
Okay. Java and Sumatra have different subduction system. That Java is straightforward, and then Sumatra oblique. Maybe you have some view about that difference of pattern setting. Thank you.
So probably the question is, Sumatra have a oblique subduction system and Java has more direct subduction system. Do you have any thought about that?
The ingredients for a volcano always melts from the mantle wedge, enriched by slab-derived components. Possibly then you add something from the crust above. So you have the slab, the mantle wedge, the crust. It's always the same. The movement, the slab can make it a little bit more complex to identify these components, to identify when you are standing on top on a volcano and you, I mean, I speak metaphorically, you look down, into the mantle wedge, into the slab. The components are not coming like beneath Java from directly under you, but a little bit from the side. But by studying volcano next to one another, you can understand these dynamics. I understand Sumatra is an oblique subduction system, and I understand that slab-derived components are moving more northwards. This can be interesting if there is something entering the subduction system, like a special type of seamount or so, and it's not directly above resurfacing, or it's not, or you do not directly trace this in the volcano above, but you see this a little bit further north. There is examples in, I think there's examples also in other parts of the world where this has been shown, and I think this is the same in Sumatra. But the basic ingredients of an arc volcano are always slab, mantle wedge, and possibly mafic or more continental crust on top.
Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully, Dr. Stefan Koenig answer the answer for Dr. Stefan Koenig. It's okay for Pak Prof. Harmanto.
So probably
because we don't have, I mean, our time is almost finished. So probably we will stop our discussion today. The Q&A session is closed, and I will give it back to Mbak Tanti to closing the lecture, this guest lectures event.
Okay, thank you very much, Bapak Syahriza and Dr. Stefan Koenig for bringing us a very productive session today. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the closing session, and we would like to remind all of you that link to the attendance report form is now available and active. And on behalf of the committee in charge, we would like to express our apologies that we made during the event. Thank you very much for your active participation today. Have a great day, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'll see you in the next guest lecture. Izin menutup ruangan, Bapak Ibu. Terima kasih atas partisipasi.